On the 2nd of April 2026, Captain Ibrahim Traore stood before the international press in Ouagadougou for over 2 hours. And in that press conference, he said something that most headlines completely missed. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, that Burkina Faso must strengthen its sovereignty in all areas. He didn't stop at that. He said political, economic, and security sovereignty is a necessity. And then he framed the country's entire part as a struggle for real independence, not the symbolic autonomy that was given to African countries in the 1960s. He said, and I quote, "It is important to claim our sovereignty." He was not trying to be diplomatic or, dance around the corner. It was very, very direct. Now, since that speech, the internet has been flooded with claims about the AES currency that some people call Sira, some people call it Sankara currency. There is a lot of name out there, and that this currency is already launched. If you check, there's a particular blogger I'm not going to mention. He said the currency has been launched, that Traore has printed banknotes. Ladies and gentlemen, most of this information is false. And today we are going to be separating what is real from what is fictitious. And we're going to be using documented facts as usual. Traore addressed the local and international press, and he did not fall for any of their traps. Now, what did he say? And I want to break this down carefully because it sets the foundation for everything happening in the AES and the conversation around the AES currency right now. First, on sovereignty, Traore made it clear that Burkina Faso is no longer outsourcing its security. He said that is a no-go area, that they will not outsource their security, that security of Burkina Faso will be Burkinabe. Now, he stated that Burkina Faso are now in charge of their own army, funded and trained by Burkinabe themselves. He said they have enough expertise and they have enough veterans who have seen enough. And he said the adaptation of the crisis in Burkina Faso can only be handled by Burkinabes. He said because they are the only ones that live there. He said even if people bring weapons from outside, those weapons are always being handled by Burkinabe. He said, and after which those people leave, they don't stay on the battlefield. He said, so Burkina Faso security is Burkinabe, and it will be handled by Burkina Faso people themselves. So the mindset has changed, ladies and gentlemen. The strategy has changed, and according to him, that's why victories against terrorism in the Sahel are coming simultaneously. And the proof is in the pudding. If you look at Burkina Faso recently, we're not talking about the 400 KIA of the JNIM. Multiple victories is going on in Burkina Faso. And across the three Alliance of Sahel states, if you look at the statistical facts right now, Burkina Faso has the most effective security as we speak, based on statistics. Second, on economic liberation. And this is where it gets really interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Traore took a page directly from Thomas Sankara, and he said, and again, I'm going to give you a documented version of what he said in that press conference. He said that Africa has to build and plant what it needs to achieve self-sufficiency. He gave the real example of a spoon, and that is very hilarious. A spoon, something as basic, as fundamental as a spoon that we use to eat. And Ibrahim Traore told everyone literally that as easy as a spoon is, that people even throw it away so freely, that Africa still imports spoon. He said, and I quote, something has to change. Now, what do you think he's pointing at when he says that? Because that is not just rhetoric, ladies and gentlemen. That is the philosophical foundation of why the AES currency conversation even exists in the first place. Remember that during his speech in Yagda, Traore said, and I quote, that we must manufacture. He said we can't blame the imperialists for all our problems. He said we must still manufacture. This is what Traore said. So he's been very, very serious about this conversation around sovereignty. But here's what the headlines didn't tell you. In that same press conference, Traore also said something about Western democracy that made Western media lose their mind, like RFI and France 24, even if I'm not even supposed to mention the name of this media here. He said Burkinabe must forget democracy. Oh my goodness, the entire internet was on fire. Now, before you react, you have to look at these things very well. He was saying that Western electoral model cannot function effectively in Burkina Faso during wartime. Please, I want you to take that context and look at it critically. He was saying that Western electoral models cannot function effectively in Burkina Faso during wartime. I mean, the type of war that they have in the Sahel. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this video here. This is a product of so many years of negligence to insecurity. So Traore is saying that this Western model of the Senate has to sit, the House of Rep has to verify, this has to do this, now you have to put everything in the control of the governor of the state. It cannot work. With the type of war that they are confronting, which is a product of the NATO operation in Libya. So that's what Traore is saying right there. Now, he's saying, right, that Burkina Faso is trying to free itself from imperialist chains. Because let's come to think of it. When we talk about imperialism, we are not just talking about Western imperialism. We are talking about Arab slave trade. We are talking about, because if you look at all this ideology, this whole shop that scalp off and say Allahu Akbar. You see, we cannot be hypocritical to the point that we deny that in Africa, let's put Nigeria as a case study, 98% of the terrorists in Nigeria are Muslims. These are documented facts. And the truth is that they say things everywhere. Captain Ibrahim Traore himself even said when they go on operation while he was still on the field. Now, when they neutralize certain terrorists, they are going to say Islamic book almost every time. So when Ibrahim Traore say Burkina Faso is trying to free itself from imperialist chain, the chain of imperialism is part of this struggle. People traveling to Saudi Arabia to go and learn Sharia. We don't teach Sharia here. They don't teach it in some places. They don't teach it in China. So, if you look at what imperialism has done to the young African mind, it's a lot of damage. So, Ibrahim Traore is saying that those chains have to be broken. Now, it is a statement about sequencing, not about dictatorship. That matters for the currency conversation because it tells you the kind of leader who is driving this project. He is not interested in doing things the way international community expects. He is going to do them the way that suits the Burkinabe people. And majorly, it suits Africa people because everything we are seeing and we are hearing him, like, it's perfect for us. And a new currency, free from CFA franc, is very, very central to that vision. A central bank is very, very central to that vision. But before you have a central bank, there will come a bank that should take care of building of infrastructure and development in the country. Manufacturing has to be part of the fundamental baseline. Because what if sanctions come? How are you going to be able to break bypass the sanction. What is your production capability? First of all, everything that the Burkinabes wear, they produce the manufacture from the scratch in Burkina Faso. Their clothing. Burkina Faso is somewhere, and a lot of people don't get it. And ideologically, the mindset is already on that page. Why am I saying this? It will be very, very hard for you to tell certain Nigerians that what you are wearing is you funding the economy of another person. Recently, there was a proposal that Nigerian coppers should be wearing adire, which is like a local product of Nigerians, like indigenous. They said no, that it was that khaki that we normally import. This is a very huge amount because you have millions of Nigeria going for service every year. There are 3 batch that are always going for service every year. And there is a huge amount of money that goes to certain people, apart from the political doctoring that they would do to the currency. The amount that, even if it's 10 million, they are going to tell you it's 100 million. So you can't. But the ideology in Burkina Faso is so different. Look at the number of people that wear Burkinabe indigenous. Like when I was looking at the video he made recently in Yagda, apart from the Burkinabe jersey, the jersey of Burkina Faso, what every other person was wearing was something native, created in Burkina Faso. Have you heard about the white gold? They are one of the biggest power, Burkina Faso and Mali, when it comes to exporting. And now they are not exporting. They are turning it into finished product. They are wearing it. And Captain Ibrahim Traore is bringing in more machines to improve the production capability of Burkinabe. So if you put sanctions on that kind of country, maybe you say you should not export certain materials to them. When it comes to clothes, they already have sovereignty. But Captain Ibrahim Traore is not stopping at that. He wants to push the Burkinabe a little bit more. Not just clothes. Imagine they are already manufacturing, when it comes to turning tomato to paste and some of those things, they already have the machineries and all of that. Burkina Faso is gradually moving, but a lot of people cannot see the movement. A lot of people are talking about the currency. It's going to come. But you need some manufacturing machinery. It is independence from inside outside. Are you with me? So now, ladies and gentlemen, to understand why Traore is pushing so hard on this, you have to understand the CFA franc, because you cannot talk about financial independence without talking about what the AES are trying to break free from. And here are the facts. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, all 3 AES states, they currently use a currency called the CFA franc, the colony of France in Africa. That is the first CFA that you hear, is the colony of France in Africa, franc. So they call them the Francophone Afrique. So that currency bags all of them together. And the currency is being pegged on the euro and the French treasury. And for them to continue to enjoy this currency, I don't know if it's enjoyment, a large amount of your revenue goes to Paris. The currency is being printed in Chalamer, in Paris. And some people said it's also being printed in Germany. Now, Burkina Faso is trying to break away from this. Are you aware that the Francophone Africa have to come up with something that looks like a taxation of about $500 billion every year? Ladies and gentlemen, so Burkina Faso is trying to break away from this colonial construct. And that is why the struggle is hard. You must understand. They were given too much by God. So much is expected. So here are the facts. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, all 3 AES states, currently use the CFA franc, this same currency. Now, the West African CFA franc, which is pegged to euro and guaranteed by the French treasury. That means every monetary policy decision in these countries, every interest rate, every currency adjustment is ultimately tied to the decision that is made in Paris and in Frankfurt, Germany. Not to Ouagadougou, not Bamako, and not Niamey, definitely. So Traore has publicly condemned International Monetary Fund loans. And I quote, he said, they are modern slavery tools. He has criticized the CFA francs, Europeg for perpetuating debt-driven dependency. And he's not alone. The critics goes back decades, all the way to Thomas Sankara, who called on African nations to reject foreign debt and build self-sufficiency. Thomas Sankara used to be one of the heaviest critics of the IMF and the World Bank. Now, on January 29, 2025, all three AES states formally exited ECOWAS after the one-year withdrawal notice period. But here is what most people don't realize. They are still inside UEMOA, the West African Economic and Monetary Union. And UEMOA uses the CFA franc. So they have political sovereignty from ECOWAS by breaking away from ECOWAS, but not monetary sovereignty from the CFA franc zone, which is the Francophone Afrique. That is the gap that Traore is now trying to close. The AES Confederation was formalized at the Niamey Summit, and in its founding charter, the three states explicitly stated that their goal to implement a monetary union under a proposed currency. That is not a rumor. That is in their charter. It is already part of the design. These are part of the reason why they came together, that we will create a currency. That is documented. All right. It is not Sira. It is not anything. No, they already have it written. On the 5th, the AES announced the creation of a joint confederal bank, which they call the BCID. Now, this is going to be the institutional backbone. You cannot launch a currency without a central bank framework. Now, this currency is the first concrete step that they made, and everybody looked at them a certain way and be like, man, they are serious. Now, on the 13th of December 2025, the finance minister of the three countries came together in Bamako at the time, because Assimi Goïta was the president of the Confederation of Sahel at the time. And they formally created the Confederal Investment Bank, you call the BCID. Now, notice the pattern. They are building the institution first, bank first, and the currency later. Because you have to have the fundamentals to come with the final product. If not, everything you are saying is just fallacy. Now, on the 22nd of December 2025, at the AES Summit, the three presidents ceremonially launched what they call the Confederal Bank of Sahel. And Mali handed over the rotating of the AES Confederation to Traore. We all saw the video for those that are very, very conversant with the revolution. As of December 24, 2025, Captain Traore became the president of the Alliance of Sahel. And then April 2nd, 2026, the press conference where Traore framed 2026 as a year Burkina Faso consolidates sovereignty, economic, monetary, and independence as a central pillar. All right? So he's just continuously talking about the monetary independence. Now, credit to the AES state. They are doing this methodically. This is what several African states and their unions cannot do. All right, institution by institution, they have not rushed to print a currency. And that brings me to what is not true. Because now the funny aspect is the whole thing is going on gradually, and this government are moving slowly and methodically, very deliberate. But the internet is springing ahead to talk about the currency called Sira and all whatnot. Now, today, the ECOWAS leader have come together to announce that they will be creating a currency called ECHO. They had the meeting again today by 2027. I don't know what the plan is actually, because this is where it all gets interesting. In August 2025, this whole thing did not start today. It has started a long time ago. ECOWAS announced that it will be launching a currency called ECHO by 2027. And that's a direct competitive move with the AES. But here's the problem with ECHO. Critics have pointed out that ECHO has been promoted and promised multiple times since early 2000. And each deadline has come and gone. The convergence criteria for member states, are strict. And Ivory Coast government have always been against this whole eco thing, together with France. And, the same structural dependency on euro and, the French treasury that plagues the CFA franc could simply be rebranded under this thing called eco. We don't know. A Traore approach is different. He's not trying to negotiate a better deal with the existing system, all right? He's building a new system, the Confederation of the AES, the Confederal Bank, and they are moving towards the central bank because that's the next move. Now, the investment bank, the unified force, these are separate parallel institutions designed to function independently. The question is, who finished first? Now, one of the things that have been discussed the most about this whole launching is the gold backing. That's the most discussed model. Burkina Faso and Mali are significant gold producers in Africa. Everybody knows that. Mali is a gold field, literally. Burkina Faso opened their national gold refinery in early 2026, and a gold-backed currency gives these states independence from the euro-pegged currency called the CFA franc. Now, this is not theoretical. The pieces are being assembled gradually, systematically, and methodically. And Traore himself signaled patience because in that April 2nd press conference, he framed 2026 as the year of consolidating sovereignty that's building up on what they already have. Now, not the year of launching a currency. And that's deliberate because that man understands that sequencing, security first and institution second, then the third can now be the currency. That is why Traore was really not really rushing to announce, and the leaders are not really rushing to announce the currency and all of that. So here's the bottom line. There's no need to rush, family. Captain Traore's speech about financial independence is not just rhetoric. They are really building the bricks. It's backed by institutional building. Now, the Confederal Bank exists, the AES Charter, including their monetary union. They were still in the UEMOA. Now, they are talking about creating their own monetary union among the three states. And they said the floor is open for any other states that wants to join them, but it will take some level of consideration. And according to the information we have, some other African state has already consulted them about the requirements. They are not saying they want to join, but they have already consulted that what are the requirements. Let's see if we can meet up with the standard. Now, you see, let me just say this. Now, the exit from ECOWAS, right, is complete, but the currency itself, whatever it ends up being called, is still being built piece by piece. And, I think a little bit of why France is still trying all the best they have is, they feel like once the currency gets out of the way, that is the biggest break. That will be diplomatic ties have been in and all of that, but when the currency move comes, either now or in 2027, that will be the knockout shot. So don't let social media rush you into believing things that have not happened. Because I saw a video where there was literally a factory in Burkina Faso that was printing currency. They called, I just be like, and they had a lot of views. It's like saying things that is not real, and they're going to push it. The algorithm is going to help you push these things. A lot of people are looking for it, but there are also some intentional targeting behind pushing some of these things sometimes, so that certain people can come out and be like, okay, we told you that everything they are doing is a lie. Right? So this is why we need to be very, very careful. The story is slower, it is more more deliberate, and it is far more significant with the way they are moving than the viral post on the internet about the currency. So when this currently does launch, and it won't be a stunt. It will actually be culminating on, years of, intentional groundwork by the Sahelian states. Because, we have to be very careful, because when they do launch the currency, and they will, a lot of people might be like, it might just be another joke, but it won't matter what they feel at the time, So what do you think? Do you think the AES is ready to break away from the CFA franc this year? And do you think that do you think that because they have already said that this year will be consolidating on their financial sovereignty and stuff like that, do you think that is why there's a lot of terrorists trying to destabilize them so that they cannot just reach, their destination? What do you think? You can kindly give me your opinion in the comments. It's your boy 7200 signing out. Enough said. But before I go, do what to hit the like, share, and subscribe button. Just help us. It won't take anything from you,